Many analysts continue to connect the dots of the southern Sudan conflict, but there is much that is needed and required to understand this. But misunderstandings, mistrust and confusion continue to rage on in the newest African state. Claims that the recent skirmishes in the South Sudan were caused by disagreements at a checkpoint remain far-fetched.
It is alleged that he had gone to the State House. His bodyguards were 300. None of them survived, those 300. And a great many others of his men were killed before the civilians were killed, and also even the UN was attacked.
The raging continues in southern Sudan, and the big question is, will there be peace in the next few weeks? We take you into an insight of the cause of this conflict. The country continues to suffer at the hands of those who bear its own blood. President Salva Kiir and his deputy Dr. Riek Machar have since 2011, when the country won its independence, had their political powers egos grow day by day, with South Sudan Addis Ababa peace agreement looked at as a compromise and not a comprehensive agreement. Analysts say it falls short of addressing major hiccups in the conflict.
Peace agreement was signed by parties that were not willing, and President Salva Kiir has made it clear that he was forced to sign this peace agreement. The government was not even allowed to add a comma or a full stop. So it looks to me that actually the government signed against its will. Now in peacemaking, that is very dangerous for parties at conflict to sign unwillingly, and then there is lack of enforcement mechanism to make them comply.
A national army with one line of command, election of the speaker, not an appointment by the president, maintenance of the 10 existing states opposed to creation of the 28 proposed by the agreement, and the international community's mode of enforcement of peace in the region are major sticking points in the South Sudan conflict if the attempts to gain peace has to be maintained.
Government by decree created 28 states which are being contested by the opposition or SPLA-IO. That has been a sticking point, and I think the criticism to the Troika and the international community is that they should have seen this as sticking points and help parties to overcome. Normally peace agreements are like that. There will be some hurdles, but then the international community needed to push, motivate, push, strengthen, carrot and stick the parties at conflict to implement the peace agreement, because now when you see the cost of that failure is far outweigh the implementation of that.
The government of national unity was mandated to hold the elections 60 days before the end of the transitional period in order to establish a democratically elected government committed to achieving enduring peace and stability in the Republic of South Sudan. The tragic conflict ongoing in South Sudan since 15th of December 2013 has had disastrous economic, political and social consequences on the people of South Sudan and the neighboring countries, suffering distress caused by the devastation, loss of lives and the instability resulting from the conflict.
There was a third force that was doing that purposely to stir up a chaos and then have justification for some other operations. Now, do you want to say that Salva Kiir would order an attack on State House when he was addressing a press conference there? Or do you want to suggest that Riek Machar could order an attack in the State House where he was also holding a press conference? But it happened. So there is an existence of a third force that we need to interrogate, get its color, get its texture, and get its intention. And indeed, it was able to spark fighting in South Sudan, participated in it, precisely also got a beating.
David Amol, the press attaché, like many other people, believe that this social strife, disharmony between communities and mass violations of human rights has profound historical roots in the society.
What's behind all this fight? You know, for the government, a government has no any interest to fight anybody within her territory, you see, because they are all South Sudanese. But should the government be put into the wall? You know, you have seen the cartoon, you have watched the cartoon of Tom and Jerry. If the little Jerry is pushed into the wall, they will accept the fight, regardless of how weak they are. So if there is any invisible hands that would want to push the government on the wall, and the government is a government, then what do the government do?
Many analysts continue to connect the dots of the Southern Sudan conflict, but there is much that is needed and required to understand this. Dialogue is a popular demand for the people of South Sudan, but almost doubted with several trials dented.
I have been complaining that there is insufficient commitment to the peace. Certainly on the part of the soldiers, you can see they are always itching to teach other a lesson. So they will find any excuse to fight. That is why the heads of state have decided that the mandate of the UN troops already in Juba should be amended to enable them to be more proactive.
On the 9th May 2014, an agreement to resolve the crisis in South Sudan and the 1st February 2015 areas of agreement in Addis Ababa on the establishment of the Transitional Government of National Unity in the Republic of South Sudan reaffirmed commitments to form a transitional government of national unity. This would comprise all the parties to lead South Sudan to a democratic election and a permanent constitutional order.
But also the leaders in South Sudan, I think they need to take the challenge and be leaders and statesmen and women and put the interests of the people ahead of the interests of the individuals. It is not about them. It is about the people of South Sudan. It's about the people of Africa who seem to have to kill each other senselessly or to have failed to organize their affairs. So the shame that actually South Sudan brings to themselves is a shared shame, is a shared failure of the IGAD and AU.
98% of the country revenue comes from the oil production. This has fallen to almost a half in the last 2 years. Population continues to grapple with the rising famine levels, with many of its people starving. The loss of hope and anticipation in fresh and citizens struggle to find haven in the refugee camp continue to stifle in. Although there are several attempts vindicating the cause of this conflict, the insurgencies seem to have an invisible hand.
Be playing mischief on both sides. I have no evidence, but what is clear is that South Sudan had always wanted the nation building project to fail. So here is an opportunity to make the two people crash and achieve the objective. The objective has always, for Khartoum, has always been to reunify South Sudan with it. And I remember during the election campaign that brought back Bashir to power, he promised to reunify South Sudan. So I don't see the hand very clearly, but it could be there. It is important to also keep our eyes wide open.
It is also the United Nations mandate, according to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, to ensure peace and order is enforced, although the sovereignty of the state also provides for allowances to accept or turn down such peacekeeping efforts. Creation of a hybrid court for South Sudan established by the African Union Commission to investigate and prosecute individuals bearing the responsibility for violations of the international law or applicable South Sudanese law remains in limbo.
So, yes, among the provisions of the agreement was the establishment or the creation of a hybrid court for South Sudan to hold accountable those who will be found to have committed human rights and other violations. But we haven't yet to come to that. But it's part of of the existing agreement that is to be implemented.
And the South Sudan conflict remains a fresh scar in the fresh.
Here at the Rural Park in Uganda is where much of the businesses reach from South Sudan, and definitely many of the traders here do not want to say anything about how the conflict has affected them. The continuing question of what is the source and the cause of this conflict continues to rage on. Aran Stabarka, WBS Television, connecting the dots of the South Sudan conflict.